This is the darkest and grittiest James Bond up to date, and I could not be happier. Let's get to the review. How are we doing, everybody? This is Let's Be Real with Brad. Today on our James Bond Tuesdays, we'll be talking about the 1989 spy film, the 16th in the James Bond series, produced by Eon Productions, and the second and last to star Timothy Dalton in the role of James Bond. It was the 5th consecutive and final Bond film to be directed by John Glenn, as well as the last to feature actors Robert Brown as M and Carolyn Bliss as Miss Moneypenny. Up to this point in the series, this is my second best Bond film that I thought was such a great film. What's crazy about this is that this is the lowest grossing Bond film even with inflation. This is because this film was so ahead of its time, shaping what was to come for darker, serious, and gritty Bond films when audiences were so used to seeing family fun spy movies with the Roger Moore film era. So when it came to Dalton's two darker films closer to the original Ian Fleming novels, audiences seem to be hesitant about it. Why this is my second favorite so far is it is an entirely original story. License to Kill was the first film to not use an Ian Fleming story's title. Although its plotline is mostly original, it contains elements of the Fleming novel Live and Let Die and the short story The Hildebrand Rarity. It feels like something new and fresh that we haven't seen before, with Bond having this personal vendetta going on while also going rogue against the British government. Let's dive right into the acting with Timothy Dalton as James Bond. I know many people don't love Dalton's version of Bond because it was a change of pace that Moore made during his time, but I think Dalton is my second favorite so far, as he embodies what author Ian Fleming created in his original work while also creating his own style, which I much appreciate in his first film. He means business in this one, hardly cracking any jokes, but it works perfectly, especially with how the story progresses along with his development. Just bugs me we only get 2 movies out of Dalton because he's been tremendous so far. Robert Davi plays the villain of the film, Fran Sanchez, a top-tier Bond villain who might be the scariest and sadistic villains we have seen. Davi gives an equally outstanding performance to Dalton, which makes this film feel so much more alive. The film also provides Q, played by Desmond Llewellyn, given the most screen time out of all the Bond films, in which he was great. I never talk about any of the minor reoccurring characters of the Bond films, but I think Llewellyn has always been a great addition to these movies. Carey Lowell plays the Bond girl of this movie, Pam Bovier, who I thought was pretty good and actually helped Bond in his work. She is very likable and probably a top 10 favorite up to this point. The story is fantastic that I don't want to get into if you haven't seen it. The way the story went caught me by surprise and made the film so damn entertaining and exciting to watch. This is one of the best stories in the Bond series so far that felt complicated and exciting and straight to the point, feeling smart and dark along with it. The writing is also excellent, with not having any stupid, cheesy dialogue that I thought was perfect for this film. There are a handful of memorable lines that I can't stop thinking about that were so entertaining and creative. I was never confused like many boring, dumb Bond movies have, where the story doesn't matter at all that much. The scale of this movie is low, but the emotional and dark scale of it is at a 10, which adds to the tenacious intensity this movie brings, which is a drastic change that we got a taste of from the last film, The Living Daylight. My big complaint about that film is that they didn't commit all the way to the dark, gritty Bond style, which they do in this movie for the most part. Sanchez is also a fantastic villain that you feel his presence in the whole film, with a ton of screen time to see his power and dominance throughout. Bond's character also receives a well-deserved character arc that changes him quite a bit, making him very angry and sometimes out of control. His wife's death is in the back of his mind throughout, which was mentioned in past films from the events of On Her Majesty's Secret Service, which shows that this is the same character since the first film, is something that I really enjoy. I also love how we get the return of a character that we have seen in many Bond films that is a significant part of this story, which I thought was an excellent touch for Bond fans and adds that emotional attachment for Bond and us as the audience. At its all-time best in this one, the action is at its best, with John Glenn being at his best, crafting explicit, wide-open action scenes that were very impressive. It is incredibly violent, bloody, and the most gruesome of the entire series. They went away with friendly, fun violence as people die in other Bond films, but when someone dies in this film, you absolutely feel agony and pain. This is because the film decides to use blood, which is a rarity for the series, as this one can get very bloody, which made the film feel much more exciting and authentic to watch. There are a ton of insane explosions, great hand-to-hand fighting scenes, along with superb underwater scenes. The editing is also outstanding, with precise cut editing that is smooth, and I can tell everything that is happening. This might be one of the most significant growths of the entire series. This film felt like it had the most action because there were loads of it, where it never felt as though there was too much downtime, as it always felt exciting. The visual effects are fantastic in this one, as it seems to get better in each of these films. The production design is also great, as almost all the Bond films have this movie traveling worldwide to create these original sets that have always made these films believable than being in a studio the whole movie. It is something I have always appreciated. Legendary Bond composer John Barry had throat surgery, so he couldn't score this latest film, so they brought in Michael Kamen to step up to the plate, delivering a fantastic score. He originally composed other great action movies of the 80s, Lethal Weapon and Die Hard, so he was the perfect person for the job. His score matched the quality of John Barry and could barely tell the difference at times. The film does have a few negatives, which is such a breath of fresh air than many of the Bond films I had covered recently. The first is that some of the action can be very cheesy, mostly in the film's climax, where you have a massive truck doing a wheelie is a little goofy. It has the fewest cheesy moments in all the Bond films, so I can give it credit there, but wish it could eliminate those aspects. The last negative being, I hated the last few minutes of the film that felt like it betrayed the rest of the film's tone and storylines that it set up. It felt like the typical Bond ending when the rest of the film feels entirely different, so I wish they 100% committed to it, which would have had a darker ending. Overall, Timothy Dalton kills it once again, being one of my favorite Bonds, handling this dark, exciting, and thrilling new Bond adventure that has top-tier action, visual effects, story, and writing for the Bond franchise. This is easily the most underrated Bond film that was so ahead of its time that I can see myself rewatching it many times in the future. I highly recommend this film to everyone who wants to watch a fantastic action spy movie. I'm giving this movie an 8 out of 10. So, what did you think of License to Kill, and where does it rank in your Bond film rankings? I want to know all this down below in the comment section. Next week, we will be reviewing the next Bond film with our new Bond 6 years later of GoldenEye, so be sure to check it out before next week's review. As always, I will see you all in the next video.